There were 3 of us that day, as I recall, possibly 4. She said, "I want to apologize." She said, "I was young and immature. I've read more since then, and you were right. You were right." And she wrote quite a lengthy, heartfelt, she felt really guilty. She felt really guilty because she understood that we were trying to warn people about this cruelty, to protect all children from genital mutilation in the United States. We don't have an ulterior motive, ladies and gentlemen. Our motive is exactly what it appears to be: to save American boys from the nightmare of genital mutilation in the cradle, to protect these precious little babies from trauma, from sexual injury, lifelong, and from the PTSD, known and unknown, that embeds itself into the heart and soul of every man who has undergone this devastating experience. We have a nation of wounded men, ladies and gentlemen. A nation of wounded men and women. Women who have been brainwashed into accepting circumcision for their own sons, or who perhaps had to take care of their circumcised brother. I talked to a lot of women who were traumatized by having to take care of their younger brothers. The mothers are too upset to change the boys' circumcision dressings, the wound. It's a raw, gaping, ugly wound, ladies and gentlemen. So, I mean, it's just gruesome. A yellow scab forms over the glands, G-L-A-N-S. So women are harmed too. Women are brainwashed too. So it's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult to understand that this is a profound, devastating injury to American men, to women, and to our society as a whole. That's why I do this work, ladies and gentlemen. That's why all of us who volunteer our time, our tears, our effort, our struggles, that's why we work as hard as we do to warn the American people that circumcision is not medicine and never will be. Circumcision is not medicine, ladies and gentlemen. It never will be. It never was. There is no possible excuse for genital abuse ever, ever. Not yesterday, not today, not tomorrow. The people that circumcise girls are now, and this is a warning. This is a warning of what is to come. Because the people who circumcise girls, crossing the boulevard here, the people who circumcise girls, they see what's going on in the United States with American circumcision. And they are borrowing the tactics of the American circumcision industry. I talked to you earlier, I don't know if you were here, but I talked about female circumcision. The cultures that believe in female circumcision are now having doctors do it. They are now medicalizing the circumcision of newborn girls. I just posted a video with a clinic's advertisement. It's here on my TikTok page. They are circumcising girls from birth to age 6, and they're advertising it. And I posted a testimonial a couple days ago. A woman, you know how clinics will get a testimonial from a parent, or a furniture store will get a testimonial from a happy customer? Well, these circumcision clinics get testimonials from happy customers. And so you'll see several of those videos on my page here of women supporting female circumcision and the doctor who circumcised their daughter. And so this doctor is posting those testimonials on his. I had to put in the subtitles. It was a lot of work. No one paid me to do it. You couldn't pay me enough to do this work, ladies and gentlemen. This is work that someone should have done for me and all the millions of American men who have been circumcised before me, after me, and even as I talk to you today. These corrupt circumcision salespeople hiding behind their stethoscopes, even as I talk to you, they are they are stripping a baby naked, throwing him down on a board, tying him down. Different estimates, but every 25 to 30 to 35 seconds. About half the boys born every day in the United States are subjected to this cruel, brutal, violent, I can't even call it surgery, because it isn't surgery. Surgery is meant to remove a diseased part. The foreskin is a normal, healthy, vital part of the male sex organ. And boys, the men they become, will be born with foreskins until the end of time. That's a fact of anatomy that the circumcision industry will not and cannot change. They cannot eradicate. They've eradicated the foreskin from medical school textbooks, but they cannot eradicate it from human destiny. The foreskin is in our DNA, just like the clitoral hood. It's the analogous body part. The homologous body part, it's the same thing. It's the same tissue. It's the same structure. In the womb, we all start out as female. During development in the womb, testosterone kicks in, and the initial sex organ becomes, it welds together, it knits up, so that in the female it continues as the vulva and the clitoris. In the male, it seals up along that seam and becomes the testicles and the male sex organ. I'm minding my language here, ladies and gentlemen, out of respect for community guidelines, because we do have, as far as I know, 13-year-olds who can view these live broadcasts. So if you wonder why I tend to use euphemisms and language not so direct and blunt, that is out of respect for those young viewers and the community guidelines meant to protect them. This is a social, national crisis, ladies and gentlemen. Just because the harm has been going on for over 100 years now does not mean that it's any less of a crisis. It is a profound crisis of the conscience for the American people. For those of you just tuning in, I am Brother K, the founder of Bloodstainedmen. We are the only nationwide circumcision protest group in the United States. We protest in cities across the United States, and since I founded Bloodstainedmen in 2012, We have protested in every state and about 600 cities. And we're going to continue to do it. We're going to continue to protest infant circumcision in cities across the United States, ladies and gentlemen, until all children are protected. Genital mutilation. Under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, all citizens have the right to equal treatment under the law. In other words, a law cannot favor a certain class or any class of people. The law applies to everyone. Everyone. So if girls are protected under the law, and they are, then under American jurisprudence, boys are entitled to the same protection from circumcision, from genital mutilation. And I should add that the law that protects girls, specifically says that the religious beliefs of the parents are not a defense. In other words, if you circumcise your daughter, you have no defense. You cannot say, well, it's my religious beliefs. Because many, if not all, of the parents that are circumcising their girls do so because what they believe their religion teaches them. They say that. And you will see that testimony in videos on my page. So, under the 14th Amendment of the United States, this is serious constitutional law, ladies and gentlemen. This is not just a crackpot theory that I'm sharing with you. Professor Adler discusses this at length in his book, Circumcision is a Fraud. You can see that on Amazon. Under the 14th Amendment of the United States, all citizens are entitled and have the right to equal treatment under the law. Period. A law cannot favor one class of people and exclude another class. So if it is against the law to circumcise girls, it is against the law to circumcise boys. The courts just have not recognized it yet. They have not applied it. But let me tell you, Professor Adler's book, Circumcision is a Fraud, has a subtitle. Do you know what the subtitle is? Circumcision is a Fraud and the Coming Legal Reckoning. And the coming legal reckoning. There is going to be an inevitable clash between law and practice because circumcision has embedded itself in the United States as a commonly accepted medical intervention. But it's not anywhere else in the world. It is unique to American medicine, ladies and gentlemen. The Royal Dutch Medical Association, for example, has issued a statement saying that doctors should actively discourage parents from circumcising boys. That's their official statement. Danish doctors have issued the same kind of statement. Doctors, medical associations around Europe have issued similar statements. I don't have them all memorized, but all of them essentially say the same thing. Circumcision is not medicine. And we as physicians should not do it. And we should discourage parents from doing it. Oh, I know what I was going to talk to you about earlier today. Dr. Jones, when the one doctor says, I have to circumcise boys, or Dr. Jones down the street is going to get all my business. I did not get a chance to elaborate on that thought. So why are parents, because doctors blame parents. Dr. Smith will say, look, I don't want to circumcise boys. I know it's wrong, But if I don't do it, the parents are going to go to Dr. Jones down the street. So why are parents demanding circumcision? That's a complex issue, ladies and gentlemen, but essentially it boils down to this. We as a nation have been brainwashed for over 100 years, and certainly since you were born, you were brainwashed to believe, one, that it is a parent's right, that it's a parent's right to circumcise a boy, and two, if you're a woman, your dad may have been circumcised, your brothers may have been, you may have helped care for your circumcised brothers when they were little, and it's all you know. And so when you have a son and the circumcision salespeople in the hospital come at you and said, can we circumcise him? Your instinct is, well, I guess. And it's that ambivalent for many of these moms, ladies and gentlemen, because the average mom, I have to tell you this, I have seen women in general anguish more over this decision than men. As for men, you were probably, unless you're very, very fortunate, and the number of fortunate men is increasing every day in the United States. The change is happening, but if you were subjected to this cruelty as a boy, the tendency is to believe that it helped you, that it was a benefit. I was distracted by some white screen. Someone started a poll, but it came up and blocked my screen temporarily. So you're brainwashed just by your culture. It doesn't even have to be deliberate brainwashing. It's what we grow up. It's the culture that we grow up in. We don't grow up, most of us do not grow up questioning our culture. We just accept it. And so if you're hearing for the first time that circumcision is a controversy, not only in the United States, but around the world, that may be all that you have to hear to break out of the prison of the cultural brainwashing. Because the cultural brainwashing is such that you don't even know that it's like a mental prison, that it's closed your mind to certain avenues of thought. We are all victims of our culture in many, many ways. And fortunately, most cultural institutions are on the scale of this one. This is the monster. This is the monster, ladies and gentlemen. This is the monster in the dark that you grew up fearing. It's real. The genital mutilation of a child is a nightmare in the cradle for American boys, ladies and gentlemen. So for men to realize that, it takes a lot of cojones. It takes an open mind. It takes it's painful. It's painful, but ultimately it will benefit you and your son to break the cycle of violence. So you've got these parents that go to Dr. Jones and say, I want you to circumcise my son. And Dr. Jones, he may try to warn them, but probably he won't. He's just gotten to the point where he's not going to argue because he knows they'll go to Dr. Smith if he doesn't do it. So Dr. Jones is blaming parents for circumcision. But if Dr. Jones refused to do it, and if Dr. Smith down the road refused to do it, ultimately the whole corrupt system would dry up. It would disappear, and it could happen really fast. But Dr. Jones isn't going to risk his business. Because Dr. Smith doesn't care about the facts. Dr. Smith, he might say to your face, look, I know it's wrong, but I'm not giving up this business. It worked for me. I'm circumcised. I turned out fine. Look, I have a prospering practice. If you're circumcised and you turned out fine, you didn't turn out fine. The fact that you can make that statement means you didn't turn out fine. When you ask an intact man, what would it be like to contemplate having your foreskin amputated? They shudder and they say, I would rather lose an eye. I'd rather lose an arm. They know that they would not turn out fine. But unfortunately, in the United States, we don't have any, you grow up, this is the one life you get, this is the one body you get. You grow up and look, sex still feels good. You had children, everything works until you reach middle age and you have to start taking Viagra. The most acute damage from infant circumcision, young men suffer some of it, but you would have to be very, very conscious and aware of the damage and know what you're missing. But generally, you won't need Viagra until you're in your 40s or 50s. Some men when they're 30. This is a unique American phenomenon, the need for Viagra in circumcised men. Because what happens is that circumcision alters the anatomy of the male sex organ. The head of the male sex organ is an internal structure, just like the glands of the clitoris is an internal structure covered by the clitoral hood. Well, the head of the male sex organ is also an internal structure, protected by the foreskin and kept at a temperature of 98.6 or whatever you view the average internal temperature to be. And the surface of the glands, that's glans, the head of the male sex organ, the glands, is a thin mucous membrane in nature, protected by the foreskin. There are analogous body parts on the woman. The interior of the foreskin is also a mucous membrane. So you've got these two mucous membranes in conjunction with each other. The inside of the foreskin and the outside of the glands of the male sex organ, the head. It's a self-lubricating structure. It's been called a sleeve of self-pleasure in men. When you amputate it, the first thing that happens is that mucous membrane that covers the head, it dries up, it dies and dries up. It dies and dries up, and it's replaced with a thin layer of keratin, which is like a scar tissue. And that's what circumcised men, every circumcised man grows up with. It becomes an external organ, not protected, and no longer an internal organ, and no longer kept warm at 98.6 degrees. That's a devastating realization for men, ladies and gentlemen. That's a devastating realization. So it's easier for a man to say, well, I'm circumcised and turned out fine. But that is a statement that only a circumcised man will make or can make. And because he's happy enough at that point in his life. But you won't find older men making that statement. You'll find young men, maybe late teens, maybe men in their 20s. But you will not find older circumcised men making that statement. I mean, I'm not saying they won't or can't. But it's the older men generally, as the years pass and that layer of keratin further desensitizes the head of the exposed head of their sex organ. And so they turn to Viagra. So how do we break the cycle? That's why I am an intactivist, a proud intactivist. one man at a time, one baby at a time, one woman at a time, one mom and dad at a time. This is a grassroots movement, ladies and gentlemen. Doctors aren't going to help us. Doctors aren't going to do this for us. They are not going to do it for us. But we will be protesting outside the AAP convention in less than 2 months now. Bloodstained Men, we've put our schedule up. I talked about it earlier in this live broadcast. Bloodstained Men will be in Virginia and Maryland from October 11 to October 24th. I invite you to join me and all the volunteers, the men and women who come out and protest with us. We've been doing this since October of 2012. We've been to 600 cities, and we're going to be in another 25 cities in October. I invite you to join me in any of them. You'll see all the information you need is right there on our website at bloodstainedmen.com. All the information you need is right there on our website at bloodstainedmen.com. The drop-down menu on the right, our events tab. We're going to be in Richmond. We're going to be in Roanoke. We're going to be in Richmond. We're going to be in Roanoke. We're going to be in Annapolis.